A very good evening. Welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to today's medieval history segment of the Target Prelims initiative, which shall gear you for the various important topics that have been picked up from medieval history, Indian history segment, which shall help you tremendously in the upcoming 2024 CSE Prelims exam. So these are a set of 25 questions that have been created by pinpointing and picking out most of the important sites that were in the news, as well as those dynasties, their architecture, their art, and certain other political developments which happen to be quite important from the exam perspective. Now with that, let's begin looking at the first question here, and it is a set of two statements where the first statement says the Battle of Sarai Ghat was a naval engagement. It was a naval battle that was fought on the river Brahmaputra, that's in eastern India, between the Mughal Empire and the Ahom kingdom back in 1671. Well, this is absolutely a correct statement because we know about the Ahom dynasty of Assam, one such dynasty which had repeatedly given rebuff to the Mughal Empire as well. Indeed, the Battle of Sarai Ghat was fought in 1671, and let's remember that in the modern scenario, this region happens to be located quite near the capital of Assam, and also this happens to be one such archaeological site which is very famous for the development of such dynasty of Ahoms, which actually ruled Assam for over 6 centuries. On that note, the second statement says Chaulung Sukhapa was a 13th century ruler who first came to India, and then he founded the Ahom kingdom of Assam, which, as we just said, ruled for over 6 centuries in India. So absolutely, this is also a correct statement. In fact, Sukhapa was a Shan prince. A Shan prince which hailed from a place which in modern times is referred to as the Yunnan province of China. So it was from here that he came and established a kingdom which was to decide the fate of Assam for many decades to come. So therefore both the statements here are valid, and we can say that C is our correct answer. Now here is a small illustrative depiction of the Assam region and how the Ahom dynasty controlled an area that was as broad, spanning across more than 2 modern-day Indian northeastern states. The area of present-day Guwahati also corresponds with the main establishment of the Ahom rulers. On that note, the second question here talks about Pratihara dynasty. Now we know that one of the key central Indian dynasties, in fact, particularly with respect to the Malwa, Gujarat, Rajasthan regions, western central Indian dynasties, which is known for the great rulers and the various contributions, not only to Sanskrit learning but also to architecture across India. The question says, who among the following Pratihara rulers, these are also sometimes referred to as Gujara Pratiharas. So who among the following rulers from Pratihara dynasty adopted the title of Adi Varaha? It's good to remember that when we say Varaha, we are pointing to a reincarnation or an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So here the title Adi Varaha was taken by a ruler that was an ardent Lord Vishnu worshipper. So here the options are A. Nagabhata 1, is it B. Mihir Bhoj 1, is it C. Mahipala 1, or is it D. Mahendrapala? Now there is a lot of contention among various textbooks and sources regarding the founder of Gujara Pratihara dynasty. While in certain books you might read that it was King Bhoj, Mihir Bhoj, who was the most important outlying ruler of the dynasty, who in the real sense began the Pratihara era. But in reality, it is Nagabhata I who was the founder of the dynasty. Indeed, later, Mihir Bhoj happened to be a very prominent king here. So the title of Adi Varaha was also adopted by Mihir Bhoja, given that he was a great and a very ardent worshipper of Vaishnavism. He was a great follower of Lord Vishnu, and hence he assumed the title of Adi Varaha. Also a very predominant kings of the dynasty. Making B as your valid answer. The depiction shows certain temple structures created during Pratihara rule. The third question here again comes as a set of two statements. Now, the first statement here says Vikramashila University was established by King Dharmapala in response to a supposed decline in the quality of scholarship that was being provided in the previously existing Nalanda University. This statement again is valid because when you talk about the Pala dynasty, let's remember that for the Pala dynasty, it was Gopala, King Gopala, who was the founder, and then came King Dharampala. Now, Dharampala is known to be quite passionate about learning. In fact, he's very famous in history for having given a lot of encouragement to restoration of the Nalanda University that was constantly declining, also due to certain attacks by assailants. Not only did he promote restoration of University of Nalanda, but he also established the Vikramashila University. Later, both these places became huge centers of learning which attracted a lot of Buddhist monks from outside India as well. So A is the valid answer here. Talking about statement 2. During the year 1193, an army that was led by Turkish leader Bakhtiyar Khilji, the general of Sultan Qutbuddin Aybak, had destroyed these universities, and that is also a correct statement. Indeed, it was the attack by Bakhtiyar Khilji on these two great learning sites, typically Buddhist centers of learning, which had led to a decline of both these. Today we can see the ruins of both these universities. In fact, as far as your current affairs goes, it's also good to remember how just a while back Honorable Prime Minister of India has also said that it is high time we invest resources into re-establishing the once historic glory of both these great centers of Buddhist learning. So here again, both the statements are valid, making C as your correct answer. And now let's proceed. But before we proceed, let's have a look at both the universities. So here are the depictions of Nalanda and Vikramashila University. You can see the ruins of both, the intricate structure. This reminds us of how well Buddhism flourished in India, specifically under the Pala dynasty, because they were great followers of Buddhism. Now the fourth question says, there was a very famous queen whose name, it's a very lengthy name, she's known by the name of Chandrabo Bala or Chandro Balabi. Now she had administered a particular region, the geographical area of Raichur Doab, the Raichur Valley, for some time. But which dynasty did she belong to? Now when we have Chola, Pandyas, Rashtrakuta, Pratiharas in the options, we know that this is being referred to a period in medieval history of India where it's very, very uncommon for queens, consorts of kings or princesses to come and take up any kind of leadership role as such. That was very unheard of. Of course, even in ancient India, we can say that, for example, during the Gupta period, we had discussed this during the ancient Indian history segment, that how the daughter of Chandragupta to Prabhavati, she had also in a way managed the empire, but then that was for her minor son with the support of her father. Now here again is a princess who had administered a particular geographical area in the war-torn times of those days. So who was she? Which dynasty did she come from? So here the valid answer is C. She was a Rashtrakuta princess. In specific, she was the daughter of one of the most famous Rashtrakuta king named as Amogvarsh. And she was associated with this brief period of rulership, a very uncommon event, hence quite important to remember, making C as your valid answer. Now when we talk about Rashtrakuta, most of the important kings, whether you talk about Govind III, Indra III, Amogvarsh, whether you talk about the founder itself, Danti Durga, let's remember that they were constantly battling, not only with the Palas of eastern India, but also with the Pratihara, we just spoke about them, the Gujara Pratihara of northwestern India. In fact, these people, the Rashtrakutas, were also involved in one of the largest remembered battle of medieval times. Now, what was that battle? Again, let's remember, it will come up in one of these questions, we'll talk about it. Now, the fifth question talks about a set of hints regarding a ruler, or a place rather. Let's see what are we referring to. The question says, there is a certain place, it was built by Alauddin Khilji. It is one of the 8 cities of Delhi. Let's remember a reservoir a water tank reservoir was made, naming it as Hauz Khas, a very well-known area in Delhi even today. It is situated near this place. It was built to protect Delhi from the invasion of Mongols. So, if it was built by Alauddin Khilji, which of these monuments identify with the above clues? Is it A. Kila Rai Pithoda? Is it B. Shergarh? Is it C. Jahapana, again very prominent, or is it D. Siri? Here the correct answer is D. Siri, because of course it was Siri fort that was created by Alauddin Khilji to prevent the empire from the attacks of Mongols. Also, let's remember that it is situated between Hauz Khas and Mehrauli. Now the sixth and the next question is again a set of few statements. Let's have a look at them. The first one says, Rajendra I built the Gangai Konda Cholapuram temple in the newly founded city of Gangai Konda Cholapuram after his successful expedition to Ganga, so to the Ganges, to commemorate the victory, to celebrate a victory as a mark of the victory. He had established this temple, a very reverend and well-known architectural wonders of India. And the statement is absolutely correct. Let's remember Rajendra I, the son of King Rajaraja of Chola dynasty, had in fact made this very well-known temple. The second statement says, Airateshwara temple was constructed by Rajaraja Chola II. In the 12th century CE, the temple is recognized today as UNESCO World Heritage Monument. So again, when we talk about Eteshwara temple, let's remember that it is situated in the modern-day Thanjavur district of Tamil Nadu. It is a wonder of Chola architecture. Indeed, it was made by this king, making the second statement valid as well. Now the third statement, Parantaka I, a very well-known Chola king, is also considered the founder of Chola Empire. Is that true? Something is not right with this statement. Of course, he was a very prominent king, but then he was not the founder of Chola Empire. In fact, it was another king by the name of Vijayalaya. So therefore, the third statement here goes wrong, making A as your valid answer because just the first and the second statements here are valid. The next question again is referring to an architectural monument of India. It says, who built the Kailasa temple at Ellora? We all know about Elephanta Ellora caves. You may have heard how during the Rashtrakuta period, Elephanta was created. One of the most wonderful thing about these monuments is that they represent a cultural religious heritage of not just Hinduism but also Hinduism, Jainism and Buddhism. So various dynasties at various points of time have contributed something. They've left behind their mark in these monuments. So the question here is about Kailasa temple at Ellora. So who had built this temple? Was it A. Dantivarman? Is it B. Krishna I? Is it Krishna Deva Raya C? Or is it D. Maurya II? So let's remember here, the correct answer is B. It is Krishna I. It's good to remember that the temple has been inspired by Mount Kailasha. In a way, the name symbolizes Himalaya, the mighty Himalayas and its power. It was built by Krishna I of the at the Ellora set of temples, and hence B here is going to be your correct answer. Now remember that both the monuments, the various cave temples at Ellora, various cave temples at your Elephanta, a brilliant representation of India's rock cut architecture, are quite important from the exam's perspective. Therefore, there are certain important temples, for example, the temple in cave number 16. So we should remember these temples because short prelims questions are often made on such details. The eighth question here is with regards to Rashtrakuta administration. Let's see what it says. It says, with reference to the Rashtrakuta Empire, who were called as the Nad Govundas. It is a very specific term from medieval India, but what does it indicate? Is it A, law and order officers in the towns of Rashtrakuta Empire? Is it B, officers in charge of treasury, that's financial matters? Or is it C, hereditary revenue officers? Or is the last option valid, provincial administrators? It's good to remember that there is an elaborate account of administrative history of Palas, Pratiharas and Rashtrakutas. It was during these times, specifically during the Gujara, Pratihara and Pala period, that provinces were often known as bhuktis. You may have heard this word even with reference to Gupta period also, in fact. So they were known as bhuktis. Provinces were mandalas. Most of the officers who were presiding over these bhuktis would be known as uparikas. Apart from that, there was a category of Nad Gavundas, who were a set of hereditary revenue collectors, quite famous during the Rashtrakuta period. Over a period of time, these people became so rich that they also settled as the landed class of the day. They became the high, empowered aristocratic classes of those periods. Hence, C here is absolutely a valid answer. And on that note, let's have a look at question 9. It is a set of 3 statements again. The first one talks about Huinsang. Now, when you hear of Huinsang, you are reminded of Harshvardhan, Pushyabhuti dynasty, but that was not the only dynasty where he had visited. The first statement says Huinsang visited Kanchipuram, the capital of Pallavas, during the reign of Narasimha Varman I. Is that a valid statement? Indeed it is. Because although Huinsang is often associated with King Harshvardhan, he also had visited the region of Kanchipuram. That was when the kingdom was under the presidency of Pallava king Narasimha Varman I. Let's also remember Narasimha Varman I is the most important, most powerful kings associated with the Pallava empire. So when you study Pallavas, special focus needs to be given during the developments of the events that happened during Narasimha Varman I's rulership. Now the second statement says the famous Kailashnath temple of Kanchi as well as the shore temple of Mahabalipuram both were made by Narasimha Varman II. Again, it's a correct statement. Indeed, the very famous shore temple of Malalapuram or Mahabalipuram, these were all created under the aegis, under the, you can say, blessings of Narasimha Varman II, and both the temples are famous for the name of the king. The third statement says Narasimhan Varman II was also popularly referred to as Raja Simha. This is also a correct statement. He was also known by the name of Raja Simha. So when we talk about Pallavas, it is their architecture indeed that becomes most important to remember. So it's good to remember most of the temples that they had created, even if not the specific king, but at least which all temples come under Pallava dynasty. And here, if we know all 3 statements are correct, again C would be your valid response. Here is a depiction of the shore temple of Mahabalipuram, and it's intriguing to see that even during tsunami of 2004, despite massive devastation, despite the entire coastal geography having changed due to inundation of waves during the severe tsunami in this region, the temple continues to flourish. It continues to exist, and it was submerged temporarily during that period, but then since the waters receded, it's back to its glory, opened up for the tourists back again, a part of India's heritage sites. The next question is Rajashekhar. He was a very famous Sanskrit poet. He was known for creating poetry and writings in chaste or pure Sanskrit. But this poet and dramatist was patronized by which of the following kings here? Was it A. Mahipala, who was a king of the Gujara Pratihara dynasty? Was it B. Krishna III, king of the Rashtrakutas? Was it C. Devapala, the Palas? Or was it the Dharampala, the Palas? Now, whenever we get a question like this, in which luckily, not only are they mentioning the name of the king, but also they are mentioning the dynasty. And if they ask you, which of these kings would have patronized a Sanskrit poet and scholar? Now, it's good to remember that we just saw in one of the questions that Palas were ardent followers and supporters of Buddhism. There's a reason why King Dharampala is associated with having established the Vikramashila University, reviving Nalanda University. It was during this dynasty that Buddhist monks would visit India. A very famous Buddhist scholar and Buddhist writer was also patronized by one of the Pala kings. What was the name of that scholar? It's amazing to see what you comment when you answer me this question, so please do that. As of now, if Pala was about Buddha following, it was about Buddhism and Buddhist ideas, then naturally C and D should not be the answer, because we are talking about a Sanskrit poet, although we know that most of these dynasties had a very secular attitude towards art, architecture and learning. But specifically, a chaste Sanskrit poet would be patronized by a king who was also a Hindu king. So here we are left with A and B. And the correct answer here is Mahipala. When you talk about the Gujar Pratihara, as I said, there is some confusion, but typically it's Nagabhatta I who's the founder of the dynasty. The dynasty ruled for a very long time, longest ever, and it was concentrated mostly in the area of modern day Kannauj. Remember all the battles that were being fought during those times, ever since the Pushyabhuti Empire became less predominant. We're always focusing on the Kannauj region. In fact, the major struggle, the major fight of Deccan India, which has gone back in the books of history as one of the most outlying battles ever fought between three very famous dynasties. We will talk about that. But that was also to control the Kannauj area. So, Pratiharas were majorly focusing on fighting and grabbing most of the Kannauj territory. So, as we have Nagabhatta as the founder, we have King Mihir Bhoj, the person who had taken the title of Adivaraha. We spoke about him. Of course, we had other rulers like Mahendrapala. Mahendrapala was famous for having fought a war with Kashmiri rulers against Kashmir aggression in his territory. And then, of course, we have Mahipala, who had patronized Rajshekhara in his court. So, answer here will be A. The next question is a three-statement question again. Let's have a look at the first one. Muhammad bin Tughlaq had introduced a system of chehra. Chehra in a very Hindi Urdu connotation would mean your face, your appearance. And this chehra was essentially an identity card system of recognition for every soldier in the empire. As well as the statement says, Muhammad bin Tughlaq introduced Dag. Dag was a system of branding horses which were then to be prepared for military or war. Is it a correct statement? What do you think? Is it a correct statement? In fact, it was Alauddin Khilji who had started the practice of chehra and who had started the practice of Dag. So therefore, the first statement is invalid here. And we know if the first statement is invalid, then option number A and option number D would not be correct. We can eliminate them. Now, statement 2. Alauddin Khilji's generals, namely Ulugh Khan and Nusrat Khan, had conquered Gujarat. That is a correct statement. In fact, Alauddin is known to be the only king who had also made an expedition into Deccan India. And a very few kings of the Delhi Sultanate had in fact invaded into the south. But he was one of those kings who had done it actually under one of his generals, Malik Kafur. Remember. So second statement is valid. Now third statement. Alauddin Khilji was the first one to bring a standing army system. Is this a correct statement? Of course, yes, he was the first one to lay the foundation of a standing army system inspired by the Turkish model of standing army. So the third statement is valid again. So which means 2 and 3 are the only right statements here, making B as your correct answer. With that, let's proceed with the next question. That's 12th question for the day, and it says consider the following statements. The first one talks about Sayyid dynasty. We are talking about the dynasties which together comprise the Delhi Sultanate just before Mughal Empire made its advent into India in the form of First Battle of Panipat that was fought by the founder of Mughal Empire, Babur. Before that, statement number 1. Sayyid dynasty was founded by Khizr Khan in 1414 AD, and the rule of this dynasty ended with the last king Alauddin Shah. Correct statement, absolutely. The rulers were Mameluke dynasty rulers. It's a correct statement. Second says the real name of Sikandar Lodi was Nizam Khan. That is also a correct statement. Initially, before assuming the name Sikandar Lodi, the birth name was Nizam Khan. And why we remember Sikandar Lodi? For many other reasons, of course, for many other architectural wonders, but predominantly also as the founder of the city of Agra. This was done back in 1504. Now, when we study about Agra, there are so many monuments that we shall be discussing there. Specifically the Mughal architectural segment. But to remember, the foundation itself of the city Agra, it was done by Sikandar Lodi. So here we can again say that both the statements are valid in themselves, making C as your correct answer. And now the next question, that's your 13th question. It says, in fact, it is a set of hints about a particular queen. The clues goes like that. She was a Gond ruler of central India. She demonstrated strong leadership in the war against Akbar's general Asaf Khan and Sultan Baz Bahadur of Malwa. I'm sure you already know what are we talking about. Recently, now this is where we are blending a current affair into it. Because normally whichever places are highlighted in the last 1 years of current affairs are also the ones on which interestingly most questions of UPSC are made. So recently the Madhya Pradesh government had organized Gaurav Yatra in order to honor and commemorate the braveness of this queen. Now, who was she? Identify the personality based on the above descriptions. A. Was it Queen Roopmati or was it B. Rani Chennamma? Was it C. Rani Rudramadevi? We have studied about Rani Rudramadevi in the segment on ancient history. We mentioned how one traveller, who was that traveller? Think, remember, who had paid a visit to her. Or is it the last option D, Rani Durgavati? And I'm sure you know it's definitely D, Rani Durgavati. Now recently, Madhya Pradesh government had taken out a Gaurav Yatra, a Gaurav rally to honor the queen Rani Durgavati. Now she was one such brave queen who had fought Mughal emperor's army, that's Akbar's army, at that point of time. Despite the fact that Mughal army was stronger, much well structured and disciplined, but she gave an extremely brave fight there. So here the correct answer will absolutely be D. You can remember this with reference to MP, that this yatra is celebrated in Madhya Pradesh to commemorate her victories. Now comes the 14th question. Let's see what it says. Again, a set of two statements. The first one, now in this question, as you notice, we are talking about the Deccan Indian or the Southern Indian literature, religious literature. You may have heard about Alvars, Nayanars as the followers of Vishnuism and Shaivism respectively. You may have heard how the Bhakti and Sufi traditions in South India began with the movements of Alvars and Nayanars. Not only are there beautiful, rich literature, doctrines that have been composed by these saints, but also there are certain such literary creations which are known as either fifth Ved or they are known as Tamil Ved. In this question, we are precisely mentioning these. The first statement says the high priest of Rajaraja Chola I, Nambi, compiled hymns into a series, a collection of volumes called the Tirumurai. That is a correct statement. When we talk about Tirumurai, often Tirumurai is also referred to as the fifth Veda. That's the sheer importance of Tirumurai. Okay, so these hymns are extremely devotional in nature. They were comprised under the regency of Rajaraja Chola I. Second statement, the hymns of Alvars, Vishnu followers, were made into a consolidated volume that was referred to as Divya Prabandha. Now, Divya Prabandha is one such outlying text of the southern Indian region which has also been referred to as sometimes Tamil Veda. Apart from the existing Vedas, this is also a Veda that was comprised in the peninsular Indian region. And both the statements here are extremely valid, making C as your correct answer. Both one and second statement here become correct. Now, here is a brief illustration that has been analyzing the key differences between the Nayanars and the Alvars. So Nayanars, as we mentioned, were Shiv followers, Shiv Bhakts, and here Alvars were the devotees of Lord Vishnu. So this happened, the Nayanar following was during the period of 6th to 8th century, and we have about 63 saints here. Similarly, for the Alvar group of worshippers, we have the period of 5th to 10th centuries, and we talk about generally 12 saint poets here. So both these texts that we just studied are critical for the examination point of view, because these testimonize the high literature, you can say, wonder that was created at that point of time, just another compilation of Ved itself. Now with this, the 15th question here is a set of two statements. It says, the first one says, Bhojshala temple Kamal Mola Mosque, which is situated in Dhar complex, was originally a temple of goddess Saraswati, built by Parvara King Bhoj in 11th century AD. This is a correct statement. Now this might confuse you a little bit. It often confuses a lot of people. When we study the Gujara Pratihara, we often say, in fact your NCERT says that it was Bhoj, King Bhoj, who was the greatest ruler and the founder, the real founder of Pratihara Gujara Pratihara. At the same time, it's also true that the real founder was not him, it was King Nagabhatta I. But at the same time, King Bhoj was a very, very well-known ruler of Pratihara dynasty. But then who is this King Bhoj? So let's remember that in Hindi, in various art, you can say cinema, colloquial local folk literature, the name of Parvara King Bhoja has been named as Raja Bhoj. He is not the same as Mihir Bhoja of Pratihara dynasty. So just to differentiate between the names, we often say Mihir Bhoja, we take the full name. The same person who took the title of Adi Varaha, he was different. Here we are talking about Raja Bhoj, King Bhoj of 11th century. It was him who had actually made the temple complex as a devotion towards goddess Saraswati, correct statement. Second, this is quite an important question also because this site is a conflicted site today. It is a site that is being claimed by two religious communities, like many other sites in India, of course, and that's why it is important. Second statement, noted as a great patron of art and literature, King Bhoj is said to have established a school, a center of learning that is today known as Bhojashala. That is also a correct statement. Yes, it was King Bhoj who had created a kind of learning center. Rather, today it has evolved into a massive school of learning. After his name, it is referred to as Bhojashala. Both the statements here are valid, making C as your correct answer. Kindly don't get confused between King Bhoj and Mihir Bhoj. Okay. Now this is a depiction of the temple. It's a conflicted site today. And this is all the ASI pictures that have been taken, the beautiful pillar work that was done here. With this, the 16th question of the day, it says, who introduced the Persian festival of Navroz in India? Now, festivals are important. Most of the times we focus on the more prominent ones, but recently there was a piece of news in which during state games that were held in one of the states of Northeast India, I'm sure you remember which state I'm talking about, the government had encouraged, in fact the games were inaugurated by none other than our Honorable President Shri Murmu. So a lot of local games, a lot of tribal games became a part of the event. Let me know if you can relate to which state I'm talking about. So therefore it also means that various sports, which are folk sports, festivals that are celebrated as a part of different culture of every state, they are also important for the exam. So we must therefore, what you can do is you can visit our website. So you have a huge link there. Various states and associated local festivals are mentioned. You can just know about the names because sometimes in the form of match the following or true or false, these questions do come up. Similarly, in this question also we are referring to a famous Persian festival celebrated quite popularly nowadays. So who did that? Is it A. Aram Shah? Is it B. Ghyasuddin Balban? Is it C. Nasiruddin Mahmud? Or is it D. Kutubuddin Aibak? So here the answer is B. Ghyasuddin Balban. He was the one who had introduced the Persian festival that is celebrated widely in India today. Now the 17th question of the day is a set of statements, two statements. The first says, Muhammad bin Tughlaq constructed the city of Jahanpanah and Adilabad fort. It's a very easy statement. Of course, we know this is a true statement. Second statement, Jahanpanah means literally the refuge of the world, the place where people seek protection. And it was a planned city which also served as the fourth city of Delhi during the Tughlaq era. Is that correct? It is also correct. So which means both the statements again are valid. Please remember that it was Muhammad bin Tughlaq who had not only made the Adilabad fort, most people know about it, but also the Jahanpanah city. It is an area within Delhi and it was referred to as the fourth city of Delhi, which means the fourth important key center of Delhi. It was during the Tughlaq era. Now again, this comes from the Sultanate period. So quite an important fact. C was your valid answer. The 18th question of the day is a set of three statements. The first one says Chandelas. So when we say Chandelas, we automatically remember a temple. Every time that happens. Let's see. One says Chandelas held power in the region of Bundelkhand in present-day Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh from 9th to 14th centuries. Correct statement. Second statement, the founder of Chandela dynasty was Nanuka. Also, this is a correct statement. He was the one who founded the Chandela dynasty in the Bundelkhand region. 3. the Chandela rulers had developed a distinct style of temple architecture or temple making that was known as Khajuraho school or Chandela school in central India, precisely Madhya Pradesh. Absolutely, it's a valid statement. We know that Khajuraho temples, the very famous, one of the heritage sites of India, Madhya Pradesh, was attributed to Chandela dynasty. It's a very important fact. And yes, it also depicts a unique art of temple architecture. Normally we study about the Nagara or the Dravida or the Vesara or the Deccan Chalukyan. But it's good to remember that the Khajuraho temples depict a very unique style because it's slightly different from most other styles of contemporary period, of those periods actually, parallel periods, and that is referred to as Khajuraho or the Chandela school of architecture. Khajuraho being one of the most prominent examples. So all three statements here are valid, making D your correct answer. With this, here's a depiction of the beautiful Khajuraho temple. And now the 19th question for us. It says, consider the following statements. We have just two. One says, Sangram Singh I, also known as Rana Sanga, known for his bravery, for his mighty retaliation given to various dynasties and wars. Sangram Singh I, also known as Rana Sanga or Maharana Sanga, was an Indian monarch, king of the Sisodia dynasty. Sisodia dynasty will also remind you of one of the very, very famous Bhakti saints. A lady, a female Bhakti saint of North India. Can you imagine or can you remember what I'm talking about? If yes, then do comment and let me know. It will be very exciting to know if you can relate to the hint that I'm giving you. So yes, of course, when we talk about the first statement, it was Rana Sanga, who was also known as Sangram Singh. He did belong to the Sisodia dynasty. We are talking about the typical Malwa area. We are talking about the Rajasthan, Gujarat area. It's a correct statement. Second statement says the Battle of Khatoli, very famous battle, was fought between Ibrahim Lodi and the kingdom of Mewar under Rana Sanga, during which the victory was taken by Mewar. It was Rana Sanga's military from Mewar which emerged victorious. Absolutely correct statement. The answer here is C, 1 and 2 both. Absolutely, it was during the battle in which Rana Sanga of Mewar had emerged victorious over Ibrahim Lodi. So both the statements here will be correct. Now let's have a look at the 20th question. Again a set of 3 statements now. The first one talks about Alauddin Hassan Bahman Shah. In short, he is not known with this huge name. Normally people call him Hassan Gangu. It's a more prominent name that you've heard. So Hassan Gangu, or in large Alauddin Hassan Bahman Shah, is also known as Zafar Khan, was the founder of the Bahmani kingdom. You might remember about the Bahmani Vijayanagar kingdom. So Vijayanagar kingdom, only 2 names come, Harihar and Bukka. Bahmani kingdom, yes, it was Hassan Gangu, correct statement. Hassan Gangu earlier was also a noble. He was employed in the court of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. This is a fact that not many people might be aware of, but it's a correct thing. It's a correct fact. Third, his kingdom included the whole of Deccan up to the river Krishna with its capital at Gulbarg. This is also a correct statement. In fact, a lot of people get often confused here. That was the capital Gulbarg. Or was the capital some other city? So remember that the capital initially was Gulbarg, but it was under the leadership of Ahmad Shah I, in fact. That the capital was shifted to Bidar later. So don't get confused there. From Gulbarg, that was earlier the capital. So all 3 statements here make sense. They are all correct, and then D will be your right answer. Now with this, the 24th question is a very recent development. We know about the inauguration of the new Parliament building, and the question is in that connection. 2 statements here. First says Sengol, very much in the news, derived from the Tamil word Semi, it means righteousness, something that's ethical, absolutely correct, and this is a right statement. 2. The sacred Sengol was a symbol of justice, fair rule. It was traditionally used to mark the transfer of power from one king to another king, and this practice would happen in the Pallava dynasty. It's a correct statement, but only half of it is correct. Indeed, it symbolized the transfer of power from one king to another, but then not in the Pallava but in the Chola dynasty. So questions based on Sengol can be pretty much expected in the prelims, maybe in the mains as well, because of the religious and cultural significance that it carries. Do remember, the Sengol has a very long history. Today, as it was gifted or presented for the inauguration of the new Parliament House, it also has a history associated with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. So you must know all those details about the Sengol. In this case, A will be the answer because just the first statement is correct. We know that the second part of second statement is not right here. Now here's a picture of the beautiful, enchanting Sengol with all its rich inscriptions, and on the top we have the Nandi. Now the 22nd question is with reference to a very well-known temple in peninsular India. It says, which temple is also known as Pampapathi temple? And it is also very famous for an annual chariot race festival that happens here. Is it a Mallikarjuna temple, or is it the Brihadeshwara temple? Is it the Virupaksha temple, or is it the Mathur Shiva temple? What do you think? It's easy. C is the correct answer, Virupaksha temple. So when we talk about the Virupaksha temple, remember it's a 7th century temple that has been devoted to worship of Lord Shiv. Today it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is situated in the Hampi group of monuments in the modern day state of Karnataka. Since the main deity or the main deity which is worshipped here is known as Virupaksha, whose another name is Pampapathi, the temple is also known as Pampapathi temple, making C as your correct answer. Now, various group of monuments and Hampi, they are quite critical, not just because they are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but also we must know under which dynasty were they created. We must also know something about the musical pillars. So that is also something you should be aware of. With that, the 23rd question, here is a depiction, of course, of the Virupaksha temple which we just saw. Just do notice the gopurams. We know that shikharas, gopurams are a predominant style of temple architecture in India, be it the northern Nagara, be it the southern Dravida. But the Dravidian temple architecture is very predominant for its elaborate, one on top of the other kind of gopuram building. In fact, there were certain kings in history, for example, Krishnadeva Raya II from Vijayanagar Empire, who was particularly known for adding many more gopurams to existing temples during his times. With that, the 23rd question, a set of two statements. The first says, Mameluke dynasty was founded by Qutbuddin Aibak. He was a Mameluke, an enslaved soldier of the Muslim general and later Sultan Muhammad of Ghur. Is that a correct statement? It is a correct statement. In fact, Qutbuddin Aibak was left behind with all the territories occupied by Muhammad of Ghur when he went back. So he, as an in charge of the territory, eventually became the leader and the Sultan of the region. First statement is valid. We associate this dynasty with the name of slave dynasty, typically because every ruler here was once a slave of some previous king. Second statement, Iltutmish was known as Lakh Baksh, the giver of lakhs, because he was a very generous leader. Is that correct? Semi-correct. Definitely, in this dynasty, there was a king that was known as Lakh Baksh. Very generous, very kind-hearted. But who was he? So he was also Qutbuddin Aibak. He was known as Lakh Baksh, not Iltutmish. One very interesting thing also is that it is Qutub Minar. Remember, Mehrauli. So Qutub Minar was initially constructed under Qutbuddin Aibak, but then he could not finish it. It was Iltutmish who then eventually finished it and made many other documents for preaching his religious doctrine in the area of Delhi. So here second statement is invalid, making just A as your right answer. Only the first option here is correct. Now we have a look at the 24th question, the second last question for the day. Two statements to consider. The first says in the 9th century AD, this is the struggle I was talking about all along, right from the third question onwards. This was the battle. In the 9th century AD, the Tripartite or the three-sided war, also known as the Konark Triangle war, for the control of northern India took place between three important dynasties. It was Pratihara, Pallava and Rashtrakuta. Do you think it's a correct statement? It was between Pratihara, Pallavas and Rashtrakuta. Second statement, struggle lasted for 2 centuries and the Pratiharas emerged victorious and established themselves as the rulers of central India. Let me give you a hint, the second statement is correct here. Indeed, it was Gujarat Pratiharas who emerged victorious. It was courtesy their brave kings, and eventually they were the ones who were then to continue decades-long rule in the Konark area. Is the first statement correct, and what shall be the answer for 24th statement? So that's the task. Apart from all the other questions that we have been mentioning, do answer the question for me and let me know. Was it these three dynasties? We have spoken about all of them. Gujarat Pratihara, the Pallavas of Kanchipuram and Rashtrakutas. Started by Danti Durga. Let me know the answer to this question in the statements in the comments section, and I shall wait for your response. And before we do that, before we end the session, the last question for the day. With reference to Konark Temple, Odisha, which of the following statements are correct? 1. It was built by King Narasimha Deva I, the great ruler of Ganga dynasty. Correct statement. Indeed, it was made by King Narasimha I. Indeed, it was made by King Narasimha Deva I. Correct. Second, it is also known as the White Pagoda, and in 1984, it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Is that correct? Not completely, because the Konark Sun Temple is actually known as the Black Pagoda, because White Pagoda is the name given to Temple of Lord Jagannath Puri, both in Odisha. Similarly, when you talk about 7 pagodas, that's the name that you give to the Shore Temple of Mahabalipuram. We just saw who made the temple, so always remember. Indeed, it was added and today it is a World Heritage Site. And now the last one, it represents the Kalinga style of architecture. Absolutely, this is also correct. So which means only 1 and 3 statements here are correct. B is the invalid statement. C will be your right answer here. So do answer question number 24. I shall wait for your response. Also do answer the various questions regarding which hints we had discussed during this session. So hope you enjoyed this session. Do practice and remember all these details for your upcoming exam. Art and architecture, whether it be ancient or whether it be medieval, happens to be one of the most key areas to cover for your prelims exam. With that, all the best. See you very soon and thank you.